Rebecca. Mine. And online? Roll call?
This is Chris Waugh with Noah. Apologies for being off camera. I'm sick, but wanted to still try and attend for part of this.
Thank you, Chris, and hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Jenny?
Hi, Jenny Custer. I'm the NOAA liaison to the reserve.
Thank you.
Sheena?
You're on mute, Sheena.
Hi, I'm Sheena Miltenberger, Range Manager for State Lands.
Thank you. Hi, Sheena. Okay. First order of business is to approve the minutes from last time. Do I have a motion? Thank you. Second? Seconded. Thank you. Minutes approved. Oh, that's true. I apologize. And thank you all for rescheduling on such short notice. The land board needed to shift, and I appreciate all of your flexibility. Thank you. Okay. We have a public testimony. Is there anyone here from the public who'd like to testify?
Don't believe we had any requests.
Nobody online? Okay. Excellent. With that, we will close the public comment period. Thank you. And then next up, we have the agenda item. So we have a lot of informational updates. We do not have Patricia Fox, the reserve manager, here today. She's out ill, and so we have Rebecca Muse filling in. Rebecca?
Yeah, so I have all of Patricia's notes on her updates. Today is going to be a lot of information, and we also have a presentation from Allie Helms we'll be doing later on. Update-wise, I'll just give a couple updates, and then I'll do a lot of my other information out of the admin and facilities section. So our seasonal education specialist position is normally a state-funded position that covers our spring, summer, and fall education programming, summer camps, field trips, things like that. As most of you will recall, in spring of 25, our AmeriCorps program was canceled due to changes at the federal level. And that program actually ran all of our after-school programming, Estuary Explorers. They also assisted with summer camp during the summer season. When that program was canceled, we had to really figure out how to fund that position. I believe it was 3 to 4 months we had left in the contract. And FOSS, our friends group, graciously jumped up and assisted us with funding our existing AmeriCorps person for those last 3 to 4 months of that contract. So we kept that work in place. Finished off the Estuary Explorer season, and then they were also still able to assist with the summer camp. So since then, we've really had to kind of stop and think how we're going to continue the Estuary Explorers program throughout the school year. And we were able to apply for some funding through the Judith A. Mogan Foundation. They were able to grant us $50,000 to assist with the FY 25-26 school year. With that $50,000, it continues our seasonal educator through the school year so that we don't have a gap in that program. We've had funding fluctuations and recruitment fluctuations over the last probably 6 to 8 years in the AmeriCorps program. And in our data, it was very, very obvious on those years that we were unable to fill the position or did not have funding for the position. It really took us a long time to get that program up and going again when we did have the funding to continue it. So with Foss's donation and assistance, we were able to have that funding continue through this year. And then with the Mogan Foundation funding, we will not have a gap. We are looking at what other funding we can apply for and receive to cover the 26-27 school year. Again, Foss has stepped up and has assisted with putting in an application through the Bandon Dunes Foundation to see if they would be willing to help us out with that, gap year. Our goal for this is to ultimately put it into our next budget request for the state of Oregon. That process for positions is called a POP. It's a policy option package. It's a mouthful. But our goal is to be able for this next biennium, which would be 27 to 29, to apply for that full-time year-round position instead of only a seasonal. So we really just need to get to that point, and we cross our fingers that the first time around we get that conversion from a seasonal position to a full-time. And we've already had those discussions with Salem and Fiscal. It's on the list. We're just going through all the motions we need to for that. And then the next update I have, you've heard us discuss for several months about a new trail we're working on down in the Wasson drainage area. We currently don't have an official name in place. Right now, we're just calling it the Wasson Loop Trail. We're also learning the process for how we want to include our tribal partners in that decision-making process for naming an official trail down in that area, since it is a hotspot for all of the tribes, and it's very integral into their cultural practices and interests. So we're going through that process. There is a formal process, so we're kind of learning that now. And then when we get there, we will go through what we need to do to have all of our local tribes have input on it. The new loop trail is, I would say, 95% complete. We are kind of watching how it's going to weather over the winter, because we do have some problem areas that we still need to do a little bit of work on. Late last week, Patricia and I and Juliana, our project manager, met with Trail Keepers of Oregon to relook at the trail and to see what other work is needed to get it to the point where it would be officially open to the public. So this is actually our first brand new trail in almost 25 years. So it's been a process, and we're continuing down that road in hoping that spring we will be able to open that up to the public again. And in your packet on page, let's see here, page. Yeah, it would be page 12. It kind of shows the area where this trail is located. It is right around the Frederickson Marsh Trail, and you can see it go from the trailhead there down into the Wasson Valley. We also later on will get an update regarding the boardwalk that is in that area as well, and it's almost done as well. So, any questions about the funding on the Estuary Explorer program or the new trail? Nope. Perfect. That's where I'm at.
Thank you for that update. Next up on the agenda is Sheena to follow up on the water rights question that I believe Commissioner Roeblen asked about at the last meeting.
And we also have Jen Kirkland here. She also assisted with some of the maps that were included in your packet, and those are on page is 13 14, 15. There's several of them there. The rest of the maps are all on the water rights issue. Yeah. So if you remember correctly, last meeting, Commissioner Roblin asked if we owned all the water rights within the slough boundary. And we didn't know. So we've done a lot of research. Jen has mapped out the information, as well as we have Sheena on to answer any other questions. Jen, did you have anything to input into this conversation?
To simply put, as you see on the maps, South Slough does have some water rights that overlap the reserve boundary. We are not the owners of those particular, not currently the owners of any of those. The Deal property will have some water rights that go through with the purchase of that land. And what we do with them moving forward will be a discussion point for the reserve. But that answers the question most simply, that there are water rights within the reserve that we, South Slough, do not own. But I don't see them as any major issues.
Sheena?
I'm here.
Your mic is off. Can you repeat the question?
North Bend Water Board used to have some. I don't know if they've relinquished all of those to South Slough. I was wondering if they came up with any water rights that were owned by the Coos Bay North Bend Water Board.
Yes, I believe that the Coos Bay Water Board has like blanket. Sheena would have to explain it better, but there's like basically the whole most of the county has some sort of the county or the Coos Bay Water Board has the ability to start a permit, if I'm understanding, but there are none currently that overlap the reserve boundary.
Would you like me to chime in on this? Okay, I'm seeing head nods. So specifically about the Coos Bay North Bend Water Board, there are one certificate and 2 permits, and there's no actual points of diversion for these that I think are located on South Slough. The places of use that they have under the certificate and the permits means that they could eventually at some point. I'm not very familiar with municipal uses, so I think what it is it's a very blanket authorization from Water Resources in order for them to be able to draw, do groundwater wells. So my guess is that would be a discussion with the water board specifically and Water Resources if you think that may be an issue in the future.
The building of the new dam and the amount of water they have now, I do not think it will be. They do have a water right on the other side of the hill, and they pumped it over into the reservoir, but that was not on South Slough land. That was stuff they've always had. There was a time when before they built the dam, when it got very low, because in the summer we had no water left in our reservoir year after year. And so there was a conversation about some of these water rights on the South Slough stuff to use some of that water at some point. But I think as the dam got built and the new water came in and the rain filled it up, which no one anticipated that it would happen as quickly as it did, we're in pretty good shape right now. But that was the conversation back when I was on the water board. So thanks.
Gina, do you know what the date of that municipal water right application was?
The certificate, the priority date on it is February 25th, 1977. Permit 10132 is the priority date is March 11th, 1983. And those are for groundwater wells. And then permit S50155 priority date is July 21st, 1986. And that looks like a surface water right.
Okay, thank you. I know there are new municipal water right rules that are limiting some of those. I don't know if they apply, but.
Yeah, and two of those are still in permit status, so yeah, I don't really know what to say more than that.
Any other questions? Sheena, do you have additional information to provide?
Yeah, I did a quick little bullet pointed rundown, and I actually sent it to Jennifer this morning, and she could pass that along to everybody because I just did some quick background research. Most all of these are surface water rights, for pulling out of streams or springs, kind of a deal. There's some in-stream water uses, that are where OWRD is the applicant, and it's issued to OWRD, and it's for the purposes basically of fish rearing and habitat. A couple of them are for domestic uses. So I don't really understand why they would get a certificate for domestic uses as that's an exempt use, but there they are. But yeah, pretty much all I can say is they're pretty much all surface water rights except for the one groundwater municipal.
You, and maybe this is a question for Jennifer and staff, the one water right that has the diversion, it has a diversion in stream, I think it's 73089. Do you know what that diversion is? It looked like it falls right in the middle of the in-stream water right, so I was trying to reconcile those.
Yes, that is one that is it's a certificate issued by and to Water Resources, so it's an internal certificate. And um, I'm quoting here. It says, providing required stream flows for migration, spawning, egg incubation, fry emergence, and juvenile rearing in Winchester Creek, tributary to South Slough. So, and then this is where like the stream reach part of it's off the property and part of it is on the reserve. So, and the priority date on that one is 1992.
Going back, that there was a time when almost all the water rights were taken over by the state that weren't already acknowledged, almost exclusively for fish. And it made a lot of municipalities, and other people very uptight at the time because they didn't know how they were going to meet their requirement to provide water for cities. But the reality is it was, I think, well thought out by the state at the time to try to figure out how do we make sure that we have in-stream water rights enough to keep the fish going. So that's why they did it.
So, and I will add in addition, certificate 96288 is another one that was issued by and to Oregon Water Resources. And this one cites multiple in-stream uses, but kind of boils down to fish and wildlife uses, again, in Winchester Creek. And so this one does cross South Slough property as well. The priority date on this one is November 30th, 2020. So that's definitely a newer one.
Appreciate it because the one that I was most concerned with was Winchester Creek because I thought that's the one that at one time they had a big water right at East Bay North Bend Water Board on that.
Oh,
their water.
gotcha.
I think they gave that up when they got the dam going as part of their need to mitigate certain kinds of things. And I think that was one of the mitigation things that happened. But I wasn't sure, so I'm happy to find out that there isn't one on that creek now.
Yeah, it looks like there's two of them on Winchester Creek, the in-streams. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. And as we work to acquire the Triangle property, or the Deal property, understanding the intention behind that water right and what we're going to do with it will be great to bring back to the commission. Because of Great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, the next agenda item is the 2024 systems-wide, thank you, Jennifer, systems-wide monitoring program status and trends, informational item.
And we have Allie Helms that will be doing the presentation. We'll get things set up here. Just give us a moment.
While she's setting up, I'm just going to repeat something I put in the comments. It's certainly not critical, and I'm sorry I didn't shout it out fast enough when we were approving the minutes, but I'm not noted as present during the minutes from last time, but I was actually here. So if that can still be added, great. If not, it's not the end of the world.
Chris, we'll get that updated.
And thank you.
Caitlin, this is Sheena. If there's no other further need of water right questions, I'm going to jump off. I can't hear you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good one.
We're having technical difficulties here in the room, so thank you for your patience.
No worries. Thanks.
Rebecca suggested, well, you guys are downloading that we'll move on to the next item and then come back to this.
Perfect. So I'll just go ahead and do a quick update here on admin and facilities. The majority of the information's in your packet. I'm just pulling out a couple pieces to make everyone aware of. One of them is our entrance project and an update on that. As most of you saw when you came in today, for those of you in the office, we have lots of flags marked. We have some hay out for areas that digging has been happening, things like that. Our network conduit is officially in the ground and we're ready to run the network. We're currently waiting on DFN to come in and start that process. It will be a multiple phase project because we need to coordinate with state data. And the IES department out of DAS will be coming down and doing the actual wiring in the building. So we are probably about 2 to 4 weeks out for being completely hardwired in here at the visitor center for the first time ever. This is huge. And hopefully once we are hardwired in, these slow networks and big documents, we won't have problems with downloading. So you'll definitely, next time you come out, see a lot of changes. We do have an intent to award out for a contractor to do the bigger project. Currently, that is Morello Construction. We're currently going through all the negotiations on that contract, and our goal is to have a signed contract by Christmas. It's currently right now in Department of Justice hands, and they're doing due diligence. First week in January, maybe the second week in January, we will have boots on the ground and changes will be happening fast and quick, with some of the first steps taking out the trees that need to go for the areas where the new parking is going to go, as well as the new driveway. So if you come out in the next, I would say 2 months, you'll see big changes. We will be in the sea of mud for a while. On that project, significant completion is scheduled by April, with everything to be buttoned up by the end of May. Obviously, weather contingent. We're hoping we don't have too many delays on that, but we'll just have to play it by ear. I also wanted to give a quick update on a couple grant opportunities. We're either just submitted or will be coming soon. We ended up submitting for an Oregon Parks and Recreation grant. I believe that was in November. Right off the top of my head, I can't remember the number, but it's like about $23,000 to $25,000. This is going to assist us in covering costs associated with a full trail assessment to determine what accessible needs we have and what trails we could potentially put more accessibility options on for our visitors. We've actually had a company come out and give us a quote. That company's Empowered Access. This grant potentially will cover their fee as well as some additional admin fees to cover that. So the goal with this assessment is to number one, give us details that can inform our up and coming trails plan update. My goal is over the next 2 to 3 years to get that trails plan updated. Our trails plan is very, very outdated. And really actually is just a vision for what they originally wanted the trails here at South Slough to look like. It's dated early 1980s, so there's a lot of outdated information, but the same concepts are still there. So this assessment that we will be hiring a contractor to come in and do, we're hoping that gives us information that can inform the updates that we put into that trails plan. One of the things that might have some suggestions around is motorized access on our trails. This is something that will come before the commission if we determine we need to have some decisions or detailed information in our trails plan on. When I talk about motorized access, I'm not talking about quads or motorcycles or things like that. I'm talking about wheelchairs or accessibility type motorized chairs that is becoming more and more needed when it comes to getting people out and enjoying the outdoors if they have any type of physical limitations. Currently, our trails are non-motorized. So due to that, not all of our trails even are safe for someone in a motorized wheelchair. With this assessment that we are going to be having, they're going to focus on 4 to 5 trails that the current terrain would actually allow these types of access. We have multiple trails that will never, no matter how many updates we do to it, be accessible to someone with limitations. So we're trying to get this done so that we have good details to be able to make some decisions moving forward. But if we decide any type of motorized decision needs to be made, that we will bring that before the commission for a discussion and a decision. Not quite there yet. The other update on a grant that I was just notified should be posted here shortly is our annual procurement, acquisition, and construction application process through NOAA. They anticipate the next year's grant should be coming open in grants.gov for an application here soon. The federal government actually, or the closure actually delayed that. But with that, we will be putting forth an application prioritizing resiliency upgrades to the visitor center, which could include, not completely, but these are the ideas we're currently thinking on: fire safe siding for the building. Years ago, when we had a fire assessment to the generalized area, our cedar siding on the auditorium was pulled as a huge fire danger for us. So we're going to consider replacing that into something with a little bit more resiliency for us. We're also going to look at conversion of our solar system here to be able to run minimal requirements here at the visitor center in the event of emergency. We are currently the evacuation site for the University of Oregon campus down in Charleston. And recently I met with management. They're talking about what kind of upgrades we could do to the building to ensure that we still have, power in the building to run minimal lighting, our pumps, our septic, our wells, things like that. So if we ever had to evacuate here, staff from University of Oregon, as well as our staff who's on the same campus, we will be able to keep those basics moving along. Part of that upgrade here at the visitor center, when we go to replace and upgrade our solar system, it's going to be a new roof. So we have been chasing buckets and drips for several years here at the visitor center, and I'm actually looking forward to a winter where we don't have buckets in place picking up all of our drips. So that's kind of where we're thinking right now. We don't have a full proposal written yet, but we're just starting the thinking process now. That final application will be due in February. And I'm thinking it's going to be give or take around $600,000 is what I'm looking at on that. For the whole project. And that would be the federal piece of that. We will have match that's required for our PAC awards. But for the most part, when it comes to a project like that, I can put a lot of our existing staff support, admin, my facilities, contracting, things like that into that to cover that match. So we don't need any additional monies. And that is my update so far. Any questions?
More of a comment. The Chief Resiliency Officer for the state of Oregon is very interested in a field trip down here to also identify some of these projects that could help. Believe it or not, there are still pots of money at the state for these kinds of upgrades. So I think we could potentially look at how to leverage and make that match, but also potentially add on other things like food reserves and other necessities for sheltering in place.
To know, that was one of the conversations that I had with OIMB as well when they did a site visit. Maya was part of that group, and they also have some money available for that type of, cash stores, equipment, things like that. So I will reach out to them and see if there's something we can coordinate. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so that's my admin and facilities update. She just ran to the bathroom.
Okay.
Deb, do you have a short update on education?
Okay, so I'm going to give the education report. Jamie is on vacation. So this report is a shorter time frame, so our numbers might not be quite as robust as they normally are since it only covers 2 months. We hosted 13 field trips, 2 of which were college classes, 3 science camps, 6 paddle trips, totaling 2,389 hours of environmental education. A new highlight on our community programs, Eric Dean has developed a Silk Coos River paddle trip, which goes through a little bit different habitats than we have here on South Slough, such as dunes, snowy plover viewing, and just more, fish ladders, things like that. So some interpretation has been made available, and he and Cherie Turner do those trips in the summer, and there's been positive feedback from the public. Our after school program support, as Rebecca mentioned, Judith A. Mogan Foundation and FOSS are paying for another year of Cherie Turner, our seasonal educator, to work with our after school program, and we're seeking funding for another year. 3 high school students have applied for internships that support that program. And we just interviewed the other 2 this last Saturday. So Cherie will have 3 students funded through the Oregon Coast STEM Hub that will be assisting her with delivering those programs. Our community outreach that time of year, the August, September, is our busiest for outreach. We participated in 8 major outreach efforts, including the Farmers Market, the Salmon Festival, and Oktoberfish. And these events reached at least 1,323 community members. Our summer interns provided 3 engaging lessons that we can use on environmental DNA, ocean acidification, and our endangered lily. And I'd like to highlight Nate Jagley for his volunteer efforts with woodworking. He rebuilt a traveling exhibit for us, and he helped Eric Dean build over 50 bat box kits for a community workshop coming up. Last but not least, Jamie supported a grant proposal with our tribal partners for the dugout canoe fragment there in the visitor center to have some interpretation. And that grant was awarded by the Oregon Heritage Commission to the Coquille tribe. So she'll continue to collaborate with them, and we'll eventually have something besides a piece of paper on the wall out there. And just for fun, as I'm leaving, I thought I'd give an update. Last meeting, the mini boat, the Sleuinator, had been deployed as of the 1st. It's been at sea 99 days and 22 hours. It's traveling at a speed of 0.7 knots. It's in wonderful weather, 30 degrees Celsius, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's headed kind of it's between Papua New Guinea, and it may wind up towards the Philippines. So we'll see where it ends up. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Any questions from the board on the commissioner or on the education report? Okay, seeing none. Allie, are you ready? Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so first I have a water building update, which will be related to my water quality, but there is no water, so no toilets are currently functioning inside or outside, and there's no water. Just letting you know, Rebecca, that in this building. So they're working on it, but I just wanted everyone to know that Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do my presentation while Rebecca solves that. So can you guys hear
Rebecca
me?
saying about putting out buckets?
Okay, so can people online hear me? I just don't want to be too close to this mic.
We can hear
It's
you.
fine. Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
So I'm going to share how the reserve's long-term water quality and weather monitoring trends are changing. And I'm going to do this by sharing a 2024 system-wide monitoring program status and trends report. And I'm going to be walking you through that. So first, an outline. I'm going to give you a background on what the system-wide monitoring program is, which we call SWAMP across the NERRs. And I'm going to describe the monitoring, primarily the abiotic, which is the weather and the water quality. Then I'll show you a map of our monitoring locations along with a site expansion into the Coos estuary. Then I will get into the annual status and trends reports, cover some highlights from last year, how things are changing, walk you through a trends chart, and then explain some changes that are happening with our rain and air temperature. And then finally, I'll end with some patterns in nitrogen, dissolved oxygen, and algae. And then I'll share with you a swamp synthesis that's happening nationally. Okay, so one of the national programs that we implement along with all of the other reserves, there's 30 of them, is called the System-Wide Monitoring Program, or SWAMP for short. So this program was established back in 1995, and the primary goal is to develop these long-term measurements of short-term variability and long-term change in the water quality, the weather, as well as biological systems, and then land use and land cover of our estuaries and coastal systems. And we do this to characterize these changes for informing coastal management. So the overarching question for this program is, how do environmental conditions vary through space? And those are all of the stations across the reserve system. We each have 4. Each reserve has 4 stations for water quality and time within the network of sites. We're collecting a lot of data, continuous data every 15 minutes that's available real time. And so we want to improve the fundamental understanding of these time and space changes and dynamics of the estuary. And also, we now have this wonderful baseline. We have over 30 years of data. So we are seeing changes that are occurring across that time that are due both to natural and human disturbances. Okay, so first, what we call abiotic, that's the non-biological part, the water quality and the weather. We term that abiotic. So for our weather station, we're looking at how environmental conditions vary through time, not space, because each reserve only has 1 station. So we're interested in what are the seasonal, annual, and the long-term trends in weather patterns. We have our station set up at Tom's Creek Marsh, which is at the south end of the reserve. We measure air temperature, relative humidity, barometric pressure, rain, wind speed and direction, and then photosynthetically active radiation. And that's important as we think about fog, how fog and sunlight is changing. So it's nice to be tracking that as well. So the weather station is primarily important because it helps us explain patterns and trends in the water quality as well as in the ecology of our estuaries. Okay, so for our water quality, again, that question is kind of staying up there. We're also interested in how the conditions are varying through a salinity gradient. So here's a station at Elliott Creek. We have, as I mentioned, continuous real-time 15-minute measurements since 1995. A lot of data. And we're looking at water temperature. We're collecting data on salinity and specific conductivity. And that's really important for the freshwater areas or the brackish areas so that we can actually understand those smaller changes in salinity. We're looking at dissolved oxygen, pH, turbidity, and also depth or water level. And the instrument that all of these reserves use is there on the right. It is a Yellow Springs instrument, EXO-2 data sonde. Okay, and so we also conduct monthly nutrient monitoring. So in order to characterize how these nutrients are changing across the estuary, we are looking at nutrient concentrations across the salinity gradient, and also we have 4 stations. Every reserve couples those with the water quality stations where feasible. For us, that's only feasible for 3 of our 4 stations, and I'll show you that difference in the next map. We take grab samples. So we have an instrument that we lower down and we just scoop up a bunch of water. And then we take it back to the lab and do analyses for nitrogen, phosphorus, chlorophyll, total suspended solids, as well as fecal coliform bacteria. We also do an additional sampling at one site, and that's to understand changes across the entire tidal. We have semi-diurnal tides. So across a 25-hour time period, we want to know how those nutrients and the water quality is changing. And so we call that the diel sampling. That's a fixed instrument that sits on a dock, and we sample water from a hose. Okay, next. So these are images actually before she moves on, comparing high tide and low tide at 2 of our stations. So Volino Island, beautiful site in the middle of the estuary, and then Winchester Creek is our furthest southern station in the riverine part of Winchester Arm. So you can see how drastic that is with our 10-foot tidal range. Okay, so this is a map showing our swamp water quality and weather monitoring stations. So from north to south, we have a marine site called the Boathouse. That's a nutrient-only station, and I'll explain in a minute why. And then as you move south, we have the Charleston Bridge, which you can actually see as you come across the bridge into Charleston. That site is also marine, euhaline, very high salinities. The middle of the estuary, salinity starts dropping. On average an annual, it'd be 25 part per thousand or practical salinity units. And then as you move south, we have the Winchester Arm, which is the west arm, and Winchester Creek. Should be using this, sorry. Here, and that is mesohaline or oligohaline, which just means the salinity is quite variable. We have a full tidal range that comes in, so at low tide, it can get down to 5 practical salinity units, but at high tide, it is full strength seawater, which is really dynamic because this part of the estuary is only about 7 or 8 river miles. So we have this wonderful system that has a full salinity gradient, which allows lots of research opportunities. The other arm of the reserve is Elliott Creek, and that's up Sangstacken Arm, this arm here. And so we have a station there. And that also is the lower riverine salinities. And then our weather station is right here, and that's at the Toms Creek. Okay, next. So in 2013, through collaborative funding for the SSNERR Science Collaborative, we expanded the monitoring into the Coos estuary. So we have 3 sites that we now run and monitor. So we have Isthmus Slough here, Catching Slough, and the Coos River. And then we also have this wonderful collaborative partnership with our local tribes. So the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians has 2 monitoring stations. And then the Coquille Indian Tribe has this station here that's near the Mill Casino dock. Next, pop up a picture. So this station is important to highlight. This station is actually the Cluzie Tribe station, but through partnership with them as well as us and funding from the National Northwest Association of Networked Ocean Observing System, which we call NANOOS because it's a tongue twister. We get funding, and so we provide all of the telemetry equipment, which is a nice partnership, but they had already established the station back in 2012. So we're able to provide telemetry for that site that didn't have it before. Next. Okay, so now this gets into the fun part. So you're going to have to hang tight because some of the trends and the charts can be complicated to understand. And so the first thing I'm going to do is, while I explain a little bit of the background of how the status and trends reports came about, I'm going to take you virtually to one of our sites. Yep, so you'll watch that while I talk about how this came about. So there was a training at one of the annual meetings for developing the status and trends tools, which are based on statistics called R scripts. And so this was developed by 3 people, primarily Kim Cressman, Marcus Beck, and Todd O'Brien, which are from the NERRs, from NOAA, and from EPA. And so originally we have what was called these SWAMP trend tools that you can download. Anyone can look at long-term data sets. Then they developed that further where they would run a lot of the data in advanced R scripts for time series so that now all reserves can make an annual report, which is pretty significant for outreach purposes. And so we get these packages every year, mostly starting in 2016 through 2021. And then Dave Esslinger retired. And so now Matt Dornbach is delivering those packages again. But one of the caveats of these reports, as you'll see, is that because of the way the data is collected, you're always looking at the year before, which is unfortunate because we're almost through 2025. So all the data I'm showing you is from last year. Go ahead. Okay, so some of the highlights from this report, I'm going to show you first just some things that I've picked out. And when you go to create these reports, as you've seen, there is 15-minute data for a lot of parameters for water quality, for nutrient and weather. So you get to look at and pick out what was interesting for the year. So that's what I've done for last year. So our total annual precipitation was about 85 inches, and this was a wetter than average year. And I'll be showing you the graph in a second. Air temperatures were warmer in the winter of last year compared to our long-term historical range, which is important. We're getting warmer and wetter. And then for dissolved oxygen, which is an important nitrogen parameter that we measure, the concentrations were fairly low, which is good. We're not seeing like huge blooms of nutrients. But one station, which is our Winchester Creek, our riverine, the furthest south station, did have low to high numbers seasonally. So there's some variation there across the salinity gradient. And then we did have algal blooms. And so I'm calling an algal bloom something that is higher chlorophyll in the water column than we normally see. We're not having algal blooms like you've heard about, like red tides on the East Coast. On average, our winter chlorophyll averages are around 5 microgram per liter. That's quite low, but then we spike occasionally in the summer to 50 microgram per liter. If you look at data from like the East Coast sites, 100, 200 microgram per liter. So we still are sort of in that healthy range. But the long-term trend, which I'll show you the graph in a second, is that we are getting increases in chlorophyll compared to our historical ranges from 30 years ago. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so this is where you kind of have to hang tight with the trend chart. So I'm going to go down to the bottom first and try to just walk you through. So what the NERRs have done through these R scripts and statistics is develop these long-term trends. And so you'll see an increasing arrow, and that is a significant increase in that parameter. A dash just means it's not changing, it's stable. And then a decrease means that there is a long-term significant decrease in that parameter. So air temperature and precipitation, they're not changing. And this is compared to the long-term average. And so I have that highlighted up here. For nitrogen, I'm just pulling out some of the trends from this chart because there's quite a bit. And unfortunately, you can't see the nutrients. So we have weather up here. This is the water quality. Those SONs that are collecting the data at the off the bottom of the estuary. And then this in orange is the nutrient, phosphate, ammonia, nitrate, nitrite, and chlorophyll. So the things I've pulled out, go ahead.
Well, suggestion, if you click the more button with the dots, you can hide that panel. It'll drop down for you. And that way we can see the nutrient data a little bit more. Yeah, the hide floating meeting controls. I'm gonna make that disappear. There we go.
Okay, that's great. Okay. So these are all nitrogen parameters. And so what I've highlighted is that they're variable across all locations, depending on where you're in the estuary. Sometimes you're decreasing, stable, or increasing. Nitrate is not changing. And nitrate is such a small portion of our total nitrogen, it really just doesn't quite matter for our system. It's important for other systems. So just we really pay attention to ammonium and nitrate. Phosphorus, variable across all locations. And then algae, which I talked about for chlorophyll, this is that significant increase compared to past, even though it's only occasionally in the summer we get some spikes. And I'll show you that graph toward the end. And then this over here is just the map that corresponds to the stations. And then here's one of our interns doing a nutrient grab sample. Okay, next.
Being more acidic.
Yes, over the long term. So pH is decreasing bad, but then Winchester Creek, the riverine station, is stable.
So that could be our oysters.
Absolutely. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so then these are just some graphs I've pulled out for the weather station. So precipitation, we have year on the bottom, precipitation in inches is what we're measuring. This is the long-term average from 2016 to 2024. Caveat with this, the station was installed in 2016. That's why all the seasons are not represented. So this does take into account that. So it didn't, miss that in terms of the statistics. Anyway, so rainfall in 2024 was 20 inches higher than this long-term average. And it's variable, right? 2017 was a wet year, dry. Anyway, so you can kind of see the changes over time. And then air temperature is the plot on the bottom. So we have month through 2024, air temperature in Fahrenheit. And then this is showing a few things. So this is the daily average for the trend. And then compared to the long term, this one from 2017 to 24, that's all of the data for the weather station. And then these are showing the what's it called? Like the confidence intervals for these trends. So air temperatures were warmer because here it's higher than the long-term average in the winter, but not for the rest of the year, which is important for thinking about how things are changing. We're having warmer winters, not necessarily warmer summers when you might expect it to be warmer. Okay, so and then this is just part of the language that goes with the template for all the reserves. So all of this weather data is helping us understand water circulation patterns, plant growth, shellfish and fish, how they're being impacted, and then the storm frequency and intensity. Okay, next. Okay, so this is some trends I pulled out for the nitrogen. So too many nutrients, which is eutrophication, is important. Because it causes changes in dissolved oxygen. It affects fish and other organisms. And so this is a plot from Volino Island. This is dissolved in organic nitrogen. This is through time. And so just to highlight here, it's the type of nitrogen that phytoplankton need to grow. So at our sites, this is only one site, but across all of our sites, nitrogen is not changing. We're not seeing, nitrogen, I guess I call them blooms, but increases in concentrations. Most of the measurements, and I've highlighted Volino Island, middle of the estuary site for the graph. Most of the measurements are in the good to the fair range occasionally. And then this is the threshold established by EPA for Oregon, and that critical threshold is 0.5 milligram per liter. So only one time, this is in the summer of 2005, did we go outside of that range. Winchester Creek, which I'm not showing here, does have more variable ranges from good to poor, and that's because of its location all the way up. It's the brackish site, the furthest southern site, so it has more variability from that tidal range that comes in and out, whereas Volino in the middle of the estuary or Charleston at the mouth just has less variability. It's just more marine, more salty there. And then this is pulling out trends in algae and then dissolved oxygen on the right. So we measure phytoplankton growth. The proxy is chlorophyll A concentrations. Our data show that as you saw in the trends chart, that chlorophyll A is increasing over time, over the long term. But most of the measurements overall are in the good or fair range. And then we have these spikes, which are usually in the summer. So this threshold for chlorophyll is 20 microgram per liter for Oregon estuaries. And so it does exceed that at all of our stations. I'm just not showing you the graphs in the summer for all sites. And then for dissolved oxygen, we are pretty stable from the marine, mid-estuary, and the Sangstack and Arm, but Winchester dissolved oxygen over the long term, it is decreasing. Not good, but yeah, these are the trends for 2024. Next. Okay, and then these are, I'm not going to read all of these, but just things through outreach and education that we can all do to improve water quality. So limit your use of fertilizers, compost, collect your pet waste, plant rain gardens. So you can read all of those. And then again, these are some economic impacts of why estuaries matter that have been updated specifically for South Slough because we were part of an economic trend report that I'm forgetting the title of. So these numbers are for us, not just for the whole nation. And here we are. Here's the map of the 30 sites. Next. Okay, and so what are we doing with all this data? We now have 3 decades of water quality data. So one of the things that the NERS does is collaboratively work on research projects to understand these long-term trends. So this is a recent one that I, along with 20 other reserves, were involved in, looking at what are the drivers of change. So we see the changes. We know that we have hypoxia and low oxygen, potential eutrophication. What's driving these changes that we're now seeing across all of our estuaries after 30 years? And so this study was done over the last year and is pending review for publication in Nature. which is really cool. So the trends that are driving these changes across all reserves are increasing temperature, increasing chlorophyll, and specific conductivity. And we use that instead of salinity because we have freshwater reserves in Ohio and Wisconsin. So those are contributing to the declining oxygen, the hypoxia and low oxygen. And then the other trends are increasing turbidity and phosphorus, which are causing the increases in chlorophyll A that we're seeing. And these patterns are true for across all of the 30 sites. So, these are really important data sets. I didn't mention this before, but, the SWAMP program has the longest running estuary water quality data sets, which is pretty unique, hallmark for the reserve system. No one else has been collecting this data as long as the NERS has. Okay. Okay, and then just some acknowledgements. So the R scripts were developed by 3 people, Kim Cressman, Marcus Beck, and Todd O'Brien. The status reports packages are run annually by NOAA staff. And then the centralized data management office is located at one of the reserves in South Carolina, the North Inlet Winyah Bay. Those 3 people keep all of this data accessible, as well as all the R scripts that you can download. Adam DeMarzo is my coworker on the SWAMP program, and he's not here today, but we call him the sound whisperer because he's great with handling those instruments, the songs. And then Jen Kirkland, most of the images throughout the presentation are from her amazing drone footage, and then also just in general staff, interns, and volunteers. They come out on the boat. They keep this program running because there's only 2 of us, really doing the core work. So I think that's all. If you have questions, let me know.
We'll just, yeah. I will just say that when I was in the legislature, we were working on ocean acidification, and we were working with all the estuaries up and down the coast, Washington and Oregon. And the only one that was staying healthy for the reproduction of oysters was South Slough. This estuary, the Coos Bay estuary, was the only one that didn't see a die-off of all the naturally producing oysters. And they didn't understand why. I think they're doing some more research now, but that indicates that we may not be there forever. So
yeah, that's true.
That was good information from my
Yeah,
perspective.
I've read a lot about the Whiskey Creek hatchery. A lot of the work that OSU is doing comes from just the devastation to the oyster industry from, I think it was like over 5 years now, where they just couldn't quite figure out why they couldn't get the oysters to grow. And it was because the intake water coming from the ocean was too acidic. So nothing, nothing was working in terms of the oysters being able to metamorphose. Yeah.
They had pictures and shows how the little embryo, as it was producing, when it started to make its shell, that's when the ocean acidification just sucked all the calcium out of the embryo, and they died pretty quickly.
I had a quick question just about whether things are correlated in time. So for that upper site, like the Winchester, where you see higher nitrogen during the summer, like what do you think the potential cause for that is? And is that also closely linked in time with like a lag to the increase we see in the algae, as well as do you think the algae dying off contributes to the low oxygen, or is it not tightly coupled like that?
Yeah, I don't know if I could answer that question.
That's
The-
fair.
the-
I was
the
just
second-
are those linked?
Yeah, but I'll talk about the nitrogen. So a lot of the work to understand nitrogen concentrations has been done by Cheryl Brown at the EPA. And so nitrogen is coming from the trees. So alder is one of the highest sources of nitrates into the system. Primarily Uquinta Bay has been studied, but this is true for South Slough as well. And they have done work here as well. And so that is, as you're up in the upper watershed, right, things are coming down. And so they're just a higher concentration of nitrates naturally from those trees. There's, what do I want to characterize it? There is what I would consider just more impact from the upper watershed that, it does flush out, but because it's shallower, it's warmer, it's kind of more stressful the higher you are up in the estuary. than at the mouth, at the Mourinho. It's flushing faster, it's deeper, the water is cooler. So that's kind of how I think of, the differences in nitrogen, why it's low. Does that explain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense compared to winter or something like that. Where
Yeah.
you get a lot of flushing
And then,
in those over shallow areas.
I'll try to answer your second question. So ask it again. So you're asking about the connection between the increases in chlorophyll, right? So we're
Yeah, just
blooms.
seeing if the nitrogen in the summer, the increase in nitrogen is actually stimulating some of the chlorophyll growth, although that seems to be happening at all.
Yeah, because
all
it's
sites,
happening at all the sites.
all the sites.
Yeah.
And then does that
Potentially.
lead to lower oxygen because there's less flushing in the summer? So are those linked together? Or are they
Yeah,
just kind of maybe two
certainly.
separate?
I think they are definitely linked. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. It was interesting to see the data.
At
Yeah.
the beginning, you talked about some of these trends being anthropogenic changes. What are some of the signals that you're looking at to differentiate between the anthropogenic and the natural trend changes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I'm trying to think what like projects we've done across the system, like to address that. What? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking for a moment, so I'm not speaking yet. Well, so I'm trying to think. We're not really doing any projects to look at the anthropogenic influences. We're mostly looking at the drivers, from climate change through our data set. But there are, I guess, collaborative projects that are looking at the human causes. So I don't know, I'm stumbling to think of like an actual like project. Yeah, I'm thinking of like the climate sensitivity project, but it didn't really address anthropogenic necessarily. Like the human induced, like
With the sampling sites that you have in the Coos Bay, are you able to do a comparison of those that are in the South Slough? So the primarily intact habitat and intact estuary versus a highly developed estuary, and looking at some of those different.
Yeah, and so we haven't developed our nutrient program to those sites. So it's all water quality from the instrument. So it's the basic physical and chemical properties of the water for the Coos estuary sites. The tribes, however, not monthly, but they have been doing nutrient concentrations for some of those lower sites, kind of in the middle of the estuary. I don't think we've done an analysis across the nutrient stations for those because we've been focused on like the national syntheses, right? Which are the 4 South Slough sites that are in the upper arm. But I can just talk about something that I'm very involved in with like eelgrass. So eelgrass has declined extensively, and we know that's from like water temperatures, increased turbidity. It's degraded in South Slough and not as much in the Coos estuary sites. And so we know that there are a lot of differences between what's happening in South Slough. It's this smaller estuary located near the mouth, and then you have, the entire Coos estuary. It is quite degraded up in the upper parts of the bay. A lot of the eelgrass sites overlap with oyster plat areas. That's also true in South Slough. So I guess that would be one of the anthropogenic things, right? You have these competing uses of the estuary, right? We have grandfathered oyster beds. They are very aware of the eelgrass. In fact, one of the oyster growers that planted some new oysters, I had a conversation and he was very aware, and he put his stakes up just above the eelgrass to try to not impact it. There are these I guess I just refer to them as competing uses, right? There's commercial uses of the estuary that definitely contribute to some of the changes that we see in our habitats and in the water quality. One of the reasons that we established the 3 sites up in the Coos estuary, those sites were picked in collaboration with DEQ because they were seeing impacts to salmon, right? So the thresholds are based on usually fish for what is considered healthy for water temperature, below a certain amount. And so those 3 sites were near areas that were having issues with dissolved oxygen, water temperatures. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Chris and Jenny, do you want to make sure we're capturing people online too, if you have any questions?
I appreciate the opportunity. I don't have any questions, but what a fantastic presentation. Thanks for all the detail.
Yeah, thanks. No questions from here, but just wanted to echo, it was great to see that data. And from my past work in ocean acidification and hypoxia, it's not fun, fun's the wrong word, but very interesting to see how the research is progressing. Thanks.
Yeah. And I will be sending out a link. So this is now available for outreach. We call it a 2-pager. It's 4 pages. And so, if it can help with outreach and explaining and interpreting what's happening in the slough, it'll be available here at the visitor center as well.
So we don't do any testing of bacteria levels?
We do. We look at fecal coliform bacteria as well as E. coli. So that's as an indicator, right? Are you having trouble hearing me, Christine? Okay, sorry. I just feel like I'm yelling and anyway. Yeah. And so we do have a long-term trend showing differences across low tides and high tides with the same 4 water quality stations. Yep. And that data set goes back to 2002.
You could include, this presentation was great. If you could include the slides in the meeting minutes, Kathy, so we can have them in our packet to approve next time, that'd be great.
Yep. Thanks.
Reference. Thank you. Thank you very much, Allie. Okay, ready to move on? Back to you. All right.
Back to me again, just for a quick update on coastal training, SSNERR or training and engagement program. We're working on trying to get that switched across the board. SSNERR is out of the office this week for her sector meeting, so she is back east on that. Just a couple things to highlight during the time period. They did not have any trainings conducted because it was just the quiet time of the year. They do continue to work on different technical assistant type projects. The market analysis and needs assessment is ongoing until we can find some funding to cover the second phase of this project. We originally applied for a nurse science collaborative application, and we did not receive that funding. So we're back to looking where we can find additional funding to cover that phase 2. They also continue to work on the Indigenous Data Sovereignty Project, and they're working through the Nurse Science Collaborative on that with multiple different reserves. So it's multi-reserve. They also continue to work on the Pacific Marine and Estuarine Fish Habitat Partnership. And then this year in 2025, we've tried to combine training and engagement assistance along with some education programming, having staff cross-trained. So SSNERR has actually been assisting some education staff with different projects. One of the projects was this time around, she was involved with the Teachers on the Estuary program along with Jamie. It seems to be a good coordination of our staff and workforce, kind of making sure people are cross-trained. With regards to the education program, it's one of those situations that if someone gets sick or there's an emergency and they can't be here, we already have school buses on the way, we already have workshops scheduled. So having staff cross-trained has been very successful this year, and SSNERR has been a piece to that. And that is my update on TEP.
Thank you. Next up is the science report. Sean?
All right. Well, I don't have time to summarize everything, but I would like to highlight one of the things that the science staff have contributed to in the past month or so, which is the State of the Coast Conference. I don't know if you're familiar with this conference. So the science staff has helped out. They were served on the advisory committee for it from the very beginning. That was Jenny and Allie served on that. We also organized 2 sessions. One was around marsh restoration monitoring, and the other was around the 5-spine green crab invasion. And we had about 14 different people speaking in those, including a lot of students and grad students. We also helped OIMB print out 8 posters for their students, including some of the students that were working with us. And so it's a good collaboration. We also served as poster judges too at the same time. So I think we did a fair amount of the lift on that, helping out with that State of the Coast conference. I should say there are other sectors also contributed too. So it wasn't just science. So stewardship, Alice was on the advisory committee, also did cross between music and restoration, very interesting project on that. Patricia was on a panel looking at working landscapes. Jamie did some work on the mini boats, and Deborah was there also with a table. And so I think the whole staff did that, but I just wanted to highlight some of the science side of that. And with that, I'll just leave it and let you read all the other stuff we've done in the notes or in the minutes.
I have one question, but also I wanted to make sure others had questions. I was really interested in some of the presentations. I don't know if you could share those slides with the commission as well.
All of
By
them?
spine, maybe just the highlights.
Yeah, well, I think I do have all the ones for the session on the green crab, and I could look for the other one too. Certainly I can put mine in there.
Okay.
For my presentation. But I'll have to check with the rest of the students, make sure that's okay with them.
That's
But
great. Yeah. This had such a great summary of all the different work that you guys did there. It would be nice to actually see some of the highlights and take away.
I can definitely
Thank
put
you.
mine in and then I'll check on the rest. And then do you want those attached to the minutes for the meeting?
Want to go ahead and put that in, just email it to Kathy and I, and we'll send it out to the commission so they get it before the next meeting.
Okay. Yep.
Excellent.
Do that.
Thank you. The question I did have that I found interesting in your report was the genetic studies on the eelgrass showing that there is in fact some clear distinct populations. And I'm wondering, as you're doing your eelgrass restoration and transplanting, if you're now taking into account some of the genetic specifications for that.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to Allie.
I'm so bad with Okay, so we collaborated with a graduate student at University of Washington, Brian Briones Ortiz. I actually just met him at another conference that I was at, and he had a little bit of money left to run a few samples. And he had a bunch of data from Washington and California and 0 data from Oregon. And he is trying to characterize eelgrass population genetics for the West Coast. So he sent me the protocol. We collected samples. He had enough just for 2 sites. And so that's what you're kind of reading about is Volino Island is our long-term site. It's kind of in the middle of the estuary. And then we sent samples from Clam Island, which we did use as a donor site for pilot restoration. They're very different genetically. And so, of course, we didn't know that until after this project. And those results came after we moved eelgrass from Clam Island to Volino. So, of course, this is a conversation that happens across there's a seagrass working group across the NERRs and also regionally, there's eelgrass working groups. So there's like different thoughts, I guess, about if eelgrass is going to go away completely, should we try to plant species that are tolerant? At some of the conferences, I was lucky to go to the World Seagrass Conference. In other areas, they're taking warm water species, from the Mediterranean, and they're moving it to cooler areas that are declining, right? There's a lot of controversy, as you'd imagine, like should we because you could potentially decrease the diversity. We want to maintain the local diversity in our Zostera species. So I guess you just have to tread carefully. You want eelgrass, but just trying to, and a lot of it is unknown, right? So some of the samples that Brian's running, I don't know that there's a lot of data for Oregon for other sites. So hopefully we'll be able to collaborate on proposals, and it'd be great to do a genetic assessment of all of our sites. But what's really interesting is that geographically those sites are not that far apart and very different. And there's also differences based on elevation. The deeper plants and the intertidal plants are also showing variation. So that's really interesting as well.
Eelgrass, the port has to do eelgrass surveys. Do you get all that information and use it or not? Okay, I'll work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. We've sent a lot of our data to lots of people, but we don't always receive data back.
Good to know.
Sometimes it's consultants and there's issues there.
That's true too.
Yeah.
But, okay.
But yeah, our data is available publicly, so of course we share that.
Like with a lot of the eelgrass mitigation concerns coming up, that there's an opportunity here to really dig into exactly that. What's the genetics? How can we actually grow up a localized seed source to help with these mitigation projects so that we're not inadvertently creating a hybridized generalist population that then potentially becomes a unicycle monoculture.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. And then next up, I think Alice for the stewardship report. Thank you.
Like Sean, I'm not going to go through all of the details in the reports, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have from it. So I've been thinking about co-benefits to restoration projects. And so I thought I would share some information that we don't always talk about, which are the people that are involved in restoration projects. And I've been thinking, wow, there's a lot of people that have had hands-on experiences with Wasson Creek restoration. So I thought I would endeavor, with the help of others, to count up how many people that has been. And I've counted up 543 people so far. So these are people that have helped in a lot of different ways, even through the permitting side of things and offsite. And then that's 512 people have contributed to hands-on experiences in the watershed. So these are not people that just came for a tour. These are people that actually planted a plant, or they cut a weed back, or they helped build a nurse crib. So I thought 512 is pretty good. So what this means is that we've had people coming from kindergarten all the way through to retirement age. So we've got intergenerational, multi-generational experiences and knowledge sharing. And a lot of the time, these are actually groups that are mingling out there. So we had a stewardship program last weekend. We had Zonta Club students from the local schools here talking with retirees with deep knowledge of this area, and it was just a fantastic thing to see. So some of the co-benefits of having this large number of people being involved in a project like this. So there's increased in ecological uplift. So this grant has trained restoration professionals from all across Oregon, but also into Washington, California, and Alaska. And so these new ideas, techniques, skills, knowledge are being transferred into all of these different areas. And these people are then going on to conduct restoration projects and other activities in their local areas, which means that we're getting a lot more ecological uplift from this project than just what's seen in the Wasson Valley, which is really exciting. I hear people telling me about their beaver dam analogs that they built in Alaska and how that's going. It's really cool to hear. And so it's not just individuals as well. There's 512 that have had hands-on experience here, but there's over 50 entities that have been involved in this. And that's a real underestimate, because it's kind of hard to get a lot of that information from how we record it. So these include tribes, watershed associations and councils, schools, state and national agencies, And this means that in changes that are happening in terms of all this knowledge and information that's getting absorbed by these people aren't just staying with the individuals, they're going back to these entities and they're talking to their colleagues and they're potentially creating changes within their group. So a quote from a recent biochar workshop that we did from one of the participants. I am most benefited from speaking to those involved in implementation, particularly Eric Farm and Alice Yates. I would really like to keep dialogue open with those folks to try and implement this in BLM timber sales and or restoration projects. So this person is really thinking about how do we have an actual change at BLM and how we do things here. So that was super exciting to hear. And then community benefits. There's a lot of research out there that has shown that people really benefit on a physical and mental way to being involved in service activities, to being outside in natural places, to being active. And so these people that are coming out here, these 500 plus individuals, have really had this opportunity to benefit in this way for mental health and physical health. And although maybe staff that get out on this project all the time maybe don't think that it improves their mental and physical health, there's still a lot of people that are benefiting from it. So, and then influencing the next generation. So we've had over 100 youth from kindergarten kids to college students helping with this project and giving them perspectives that are going to influence lifelong decision-making and changes and thought processes and where they go in life. So a quote from one of the Coos Watershed Association seasonal staff. This was a young woman that I met on the trails and I said, hey, how are you enjoying your seasonal work here? And she said, I have no idea that this kind of work existed and I love it. And I was like, cool. So she was talking about changing her track in college and university and where she was going because she had this experience out here. And then, this is a focus on the hands-on experiences, but so it doesn't include over 780 people that have attended presentations on this project and the people looking at social media posts. And I was on a call with someone that I'd never met before. He's based in Washington. And he said, everyone is talking about the Wasson Creek project. And so, we're getting highlights all across in different states, people looking to South Slough, people looking to this project to see it as a showcase for something pretty exceptional. So I think that that's really exciting for us. So then I lastly wanted just to say that, it's been shown that people that have hands-on experiences with an area feel more connected and they feel invested in the success. So I'm super excited with the 500 plus people that are hopefully looking to this area to be like, yeah, I feel a little responsible for making sure it succeeds. And, I've had volunteers say, oh, I go out there and I check on my plant or I check on my thing. And, I want to help it along. So I think these kind of opportunities are really great. And that's all I got.
I just want to say, as a Coos Bay School Board member, we had a big presentation this last couple of days ago about co-curricular activities with kids and how not over 90% of kids that are involved in co-curricular activities actually graduate. So it's a big indicator of whether or not kids are successful. The destination kids are clearly engaged out here at South Slough, and it has been a major impact. And they are a group of kids that don't just generally get into co-curriculars, but we consider this one of those co-curricular activities for a group of kids who otherwise wouldn't have it. So I just want to make sure that we clearly said thank you from Coos Bay School District. You do it with elementary as well, but with some kids, it's harder to find those opportunities. With caring adults, which is one of the definitions. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. And I followed up with, we had a destination group come out. And at the time I thought, oh my gosh, I chose something that was really challenging. And are these kids, never going to come back? And I followed up afterwards and sent a photo with all of the willows that they planted were starting to, grow. And so I said, look at all these amazing willows. And I got the feedback that this activity here was their favorite out of all of the ones that they did, and that they felt that it was really really meaningful and a great experience, despite a bit of complaining on the day.
Yep.
You, Commissioner.
Yep.
I want to do another thank you. We've had 2 classes taught at OIB that have come out to Wasson Creek and got either presentations from Alice and or also going out to the Wasson Creek site to do a little bit of work. But they also gave lots of really good feedback on how valuable they found it was and to see the scale of the project and to have your information on it. So it was, yeah, impactful there too. So thank you.
We're looking forward. Alice and I are going to be presenting, primarily Alice, at River Restoration Northwest, which is this conference up in Stevenson, Washington, but it really is an international conference bringing in river restoration experts across the country. In fact, we're on a panel that includes a Brit, Scott, and Alice, a New Zealander, Kiwi. So it's going to be really internationally well received and a great opportunity to showcase Wasson Creek and Alice's work. So I'm looking forward to hearing the report back on what we learned from that at the next commission meeting. Thank you. All right. And one last info item, right? Friends of South Slough are great partners at FOSS. Christine?
Thank you. I think a lot of the stuff that I've put in our report, sorry I didn't get in the booklet that was put online, but has already been covered here. Working very closely during this period of economic uncertainty with our partners at South Slough to make sure that we're strategic in our priorities. We really support all of the activities. And I think the Saturday stewards that Alice just talked about, the importance of active participation in learning is so important. And there were all ages involved in those programs. And the one thing that we have been really happy about is the Zonta Club at Marshfield. They helped us in the 50th anniversary. They cooked the tuna with tuna guys, and so that partnership, thanks to the people that are mentoring those students, is continuing, and those students excel as they leave Marshfield for sure. There's some really high achievers than that. So those kinds of things in the community are absolutely essential. And I applaud that Caitlin is bringing these stories, because the South Coast is so underappreciated in Salem. And those stories of success and engagement and what a community is absolutely important to reiterate and impress people with those statistics. So the other thing that we're so excited is that Rebecca's promising that in January we will actually be connected here on the internet. That picture in your thing was, we just definitely wanted a ribbon cutting, because all of us have suffered through the problems of internet connectivity here. And so hooray, hooray, and hats off to Rebecca and her amazing team that's making things happen and sticking with it. So it takes a lot of drive. So we're happy to be here. We are planning to have our FOSS annual meeting on the 10th of January at hopefully we'll be at in North Bend again. So we'll stay tuned. We'll give you the announcement and hope we can get people there on a Saturday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I have a question. I don't know, Christine, if you could answer, but maybe Juliana can. For the entrance project, many thanks to FOSS for helping us move that along. Will that construction impact our March meeting? And do we need to potentially, I know you were talking about potential floating closures that might be needed for the entrance.
I think by then we should, I would say maybe by the time we work on sending out packets, we will know for sure.
Okay.
Just thinking like the middle of February, at what stage that will be. Juliana has done a great job in working with the contractors and the schedule and all that, ensuring we will continue to be open during this time frame. It's part of their contract that they have to allow access. We're also trying to organize like staff parking and things like that on bigger days. And we're going to make the opportunity for staff to schedule days home so that we don't have as many vehicles here. So I think once we get to that or closer to that point, we'll know a little bit more. I'll just throw this out there that potentially having an online meeting that day might be highly likely.
Okay.
But I'm going to let Juliana comment if you would like to.
So I don't have a schedule from the contractor, and that's kind of the key piece of this whole puzzle. So trying to go off of the schedule I built in my head, which may or may not align with theirs. I think it will be fine. We will have to be strategic about parking and some things like that. But knowing that those dates are in place, I can coordinate ahead of time. And so it probably will be okay, but I haven't actually gotten to talk to the contractor yet because we're not fully under contract yet. So thank you for bringing that up, and I will keep that in mind. And as Rebecca says, we can provide more information after the first of the year.
Well, if we can do it as a hybrid meeting or a completely remote meeting, then I think that might help. But so keep us informed and let us know, and we'll adjust accordingly.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that sound okay to commissioners?
Thank you. At that point, you guys might actually want to be here and see what the changes are happening instead of just status quo.
Well, maybe we can move it to April for a ribbon cutting. Christine.
I failed to let Todd participate in this. So did you have any comments on? Todd is very involved with the county. So I would like to ask him to say a few words.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I think most of you do. I'm Todd Buchholz. I'm the vice chair of Friends of the South Slough. I've been involved in this Friends since I was area manager at BLM, and I've been about 10 years. And frankly, I was ready to pack it up and say goodbye because of the leadership here at the South Slough was problematic. But since Patricia has been here, I just want to give a big shout out to her that it's a hell of a lot easier now for a nonprofit volunteer bunch of folks to work with the South Slough and their leadership and management. And Rebecca, you too, kudos to you and Patricia both. I just wanted to get that out and say thank you, Patricia. And I'm sorry she's not here today to hear that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Rubin?
Yeah, I just want to say the POP that you're talking about for South Slough, is that going to be through DSO? You're going to say, Lance? So I would recommend that as we get to know when this is going to happen and when it's going to show up in Ways and Means and supporting the budget, it is always helpful for people at the legislature to see people at their hearings talking about why it's important. And even more importantly, if you can get kids there to talk about the impact it's having on their lives, that is even more important for legislators. They love having them there. They love hearing from people and they love asking them questions. So as this moves forward in the February session, this will be in the following one. This is a year from now. When we start getting closer to that, we really need to start thinking about a way to get the message across to people so they understand how important it is. And for those of us in this room, making sure you talk to our local, state representatives and senators ahead of time. So there are no surprises, so they know it is part of it. It's really important to make sure that happens. So I just wanted to clarify, I mean, encourage people to get engaged and involved, because you've got to get it through the governor's office in the first place. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on before the process gets to the legislature. So all of those things can use people's support and along the way. So thank you.
Okay, well, we kind of talked about our next scheduled meeting in March, so an asterisk on that we might be coming back and either moving it or putting it all virtual if need be. Any other matters before the commission today? We have flown through the agenda far ahead of schedule. We all get quite a bit of time back, and I get to go see the new boardwalk. So excellent. Great, thank you. We will formally adjourn.
Thanks all.
Thank you all. Good to see you virtually.